Hey everybody, welcome back to 35-week test review for U.S. History, Part 3, because we already did Part 1 and Part 2. Alright, because I like to repeat myself, I get paid a nickel every time I do. Test Tuesday. What is it on there? 50 regions, multiple choice questions. What's covered? Everything. Man, everything! Except for, 1970s to the present. How much will this test count in the fourth market quarter? Double test grade, 200 points, which is a lot, which means you should be studying, but I know you're studying because you're watching this, and I love you. Thank you. All right. So, we have previously talked about colonial times. We talked about the Articles of Confederation, and we talked about the Constitution, and now it's a brand new nation. All right, guys? Like Washington, he's got his weird, funky teeth, and he is presidenting and doing his thing, and now we're like a country and whatnot. All right. So, moving on here. We are now in the early, meaning 1803, 1800s, and President Jefferson is purchasing Louisiana from France. Now, so here's the deal. Like, the long, drawn-out story is that once upon a time, President Jefferson was like, dude, how cool would it be to have New Orleans? It's at the base, the mouth of the Mississippi River. It's, strategically important. This would be wonderful if we could have that and just a little other piece of land. So he sends Monroe over to France to talk to Napoleon to buy that little bit of land for $10 million because that's what Congress said you can spend. So Monroe goes over there and Napoleon's like, I would like to sell you more, but it will cost you just a little bit more, but you'll get so much more land. And so, sorry, I feel weird doing the accent alone. With you guys, I feel like I can really go all out weird French. So anyway, so they say, yeah, let's take the whole territory for just $5 million more. Sounds great. The only problem is Jefferson didn't have Congress's permission to buy the entire territory or to spend $15 million. So he's like, well, but we're doing it. And so he did. So he used his power of the elastic clause and his power as chief diplomat, which is the ability to make treaties to purchase the territory. So that's kind of the part that you need to know. That even though, no, it's not written in the Constitution that you can just kind of do that, he's like, implied powers, elastic clause, let's do it. All right, so we get that territory, and it's like, I don't know, like you have a potato chip and you're like, wow, that was a good potato chip. And then you're like, but now I want more potato chips. I must have more. And that's kind of manifest destiny. We got a little bit of land and then we're like, we must have more. And so it's our desire to spread the nation from the Atlantic to the Pacific Oceans. And so, and you might want to pause this and look at this. You could kind of see how just over time we manifested our destiny from the Atlantic over to the Pacific. So, here's the original 13 colonies. We win the Revolutionary War. We get this green here. Don't tell Mr. Marshall it's green. He'll never know. 1803, we get this orange here. We secede Florida or cede Florida. We, get that from Spain. We have the fun and excitement with Texas, where Texas for a little bit becomes an independent nation from Mexico, and then we annex them. Then, of course, time goes on, and then we end up going to war with Mexico, where we get the Mexican Cession. Before that, though, we purchase this from Great Britain. After the war, we purchase this little bit here. And these things go back and forth and whatever. Manifest destiny, okay? Manifest destiny. We're very excited about it. Sea to shining sea. Okay, so cool, we get all this land, all right? We have eaten our fill of potato chips. But have you ever done that where you've eaten your fill of potato chips and you've eaten an entire bag and then you feel sick to your stomach? That's America's sectionalism. So basically, every time we got new land, we're feeling sick to our stomach because now we have to decide what's going to happen. Is that land going to come in as a free state, slave state, or God only knows what? A free slave? Nah, that doesn't make sense. So what have we done? So we have the Louisiana Purchase, and there's actually a really, really good set of notes that we took on this with all these causes and effects. It's actually causes and effects leading up to the Civil War. You should look for that sheet because this really explains this whole thing really, really well. It should be in your notes somewhere. So yeah, so we get the Louisiana Purchase. Now it takes a little while for people to start moving in there because that happens in 1803. And right around 1820, we're like, oh my God, like, what are we going to do? We have to keep the number of slave states and free states equal. So we say, all right, Missouri, you can come in as a slave state. Maine, you can come as a free state. And we set this dividing line at 3630 for latitude. Well, okay, time goes on, and then we have our war with Mexico, so we get that big chunk of land, and so actually within like a year or two, we need to do the Compromise of 1850. And so here we say California is going to enter as a free state, that we're going to have popular sovereignty for some of the territories that came in, and then we're going to have the Fugitive Slave Act, where basically the North can't just be like, haha, your slaves ran away and now they're free. Now we had to help and capture them, help Southern authorities capture them and send them back into slavery. Then you have the fun and excitement that is the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Now, Kansas and Nebraska actually fell under the Missouri Compromise, but there's a whole controversy there because they don't want to fall under the Missouri Compromise. They, are saying maybe we want to be slave states. So this guy named Stephen Douglas is like, hey, it would be fun if they had popular sovereignty, which is the ability to vote to decide whether they're going to be free or slave states. And as you guys hopefully remember, you have this super awesome guy. Well, actually more awesome in that he had the best hair. Like seriously, do Google search for John Brown. Dude had rockin' hair. So John Brown is like, hey, it would be fun if I go and kill people that are going to vote for slavery. Amazingly enough, people aren't fans of that, and then they start killing people, and you get Bleeding Kansas. Now, here's the deal. When you look at this stuff, again, for this test, I can tell you why, because I made the test. No, you don't need to memorize, the little particulars. You need to know that all these things happen because we add more land and because we're trying to deal with the question of slavery, and we're trying so hard to prevent a civil war. Now, if we're talking regions, I'm saying you need to know this stuff, all right, because it works great for talking about for essays, because when we grade the regions, we get so excited when you use specifics in essays that, every time you do an angel gets his wings, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, I really don't. Trail of Tears. So basically here's what happens. Again, for the multiple choice, I'm giving you a ton of detail that you do not need to know for the multiple choice. Yes, there's some states, namely Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, that are saying, you know what, we would love to have all the land within our state. We don't want to have these Indian reservations there anymore. So they're like, how do we not have Indian reservations? We get rid of Native Americans. So anyway, this ends up going to the Supreme Court as the case Worcester versus Georgia. And they're like, nope, that was a treaty made with the national government. These guys shouldn't have to move. Awesome. It's justice, real justice. How often do we have that in U.S. history? Yay. But then we kind of have the small issue of President Jackson, who is the president and the head of the executive branch, which the executive branch enforces the laws. And he basically says, yeah, what are you going to do about it? They're moving. So what do you need to know for the test? You need to know the deal that Jackson is not a big supporter of the Native Americans, and thus the Trail of Tears happens. Again, for the regions, you should know sort of the whole story. And what was the Trail of Tears? It's a long journey. It was deadly. It was awful. All right. A little bit more into the causes of the Civil War. What's the significance of the Dred Scot Supreme Court decision? Again, I'm giving you specifics here, in part because I can't help myself. I have a condition where, history flows through my blood. But, as long as you kind of get it, this is definitely in the lead up to the Civil War. This is really agitating. But, yeah, so, it says, dude, you're black, so you're not a citizen. You can't even sue in court. Number 2, it doesn't matter where your master had taken you. You're property. You'll always be property. And 3, the Missouri Compromise is unconstitutional. So yeah, it's definitely a long-term cause of the Civil War. How did the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin contribute to the Civil War? Well, again, it's sort of a similar thing, that you have this book and, people are reading it and they're saying, wow, that slavery thing actually does really stink. Maybe we shouldn't have it. And so you actually end up adding people to the abolitionist cause. How's the South feel about that? Not happy, because more people are against them. And so it's an agitation. And, very famously, Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote the novel, she visits the White House during the Civil War, and, Lincoln says, oh, so you're the little lady that started this war. Like, did she start the war? No, lady wrote a book, but it really definitely changed things. Alrighty, guys, that is the end of part 3. Tune in again for part 4.